How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Stupid Questions podcast. Today we're going to be talking with Dede Griesbauer. She is a professional triathlete who has been in the sport now for over 20 years. She's done some amazing things, just finished the Race Across America bike race as part of a four-man team that shrunk to a three-man team. She has worked on Wall Street doing equity trading. She has met Fidel Castro, and she's a world-class swimmer who swam with the Harvard men's team, not as a competing member of that team, but trained with them and then did compete with Stanford. She has an amazing story and really happy to have her on. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Miss Dede Griesbauer. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm super excited to get to talk to you and get to know you a little bit. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm well fed. Just got done eating with actually my wife. So she just passed her boards for a nurse practitioner. So that was like 20 minutes ago. So we are happy and life is looking good.
That's amazing. Congratulations to her. That's huge.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No more studying.
No more studying. She's like, I don't know what to do with myself. I was like, well,
all this free time, what are you going to do?
I know. Go shopping or something. Go have fun for a little bit while I go record. But yeah. So where are you at right now?
I am down in the Outer Banks in North Carolina, actually.
Okay, nice.
My mother-in-law has a house down here, and the family does a vacation every year for a couple of weeks, and my husband and I actually haven't been able to make it because summer is always a busy time for me and
Sure.
between racing and commentary, but I just finished RAM 2 days ago up in Atlantic City, so my husband flew to Philadelphia, scooped me up off the pavement. We drove down here yesterday, so we're here for a few days. We head back to Boulder on Saturday.
Oh, wow, cool, yeah. I've been to Outer Banks a few times. I was born and raised in Brevard, North Carolina,
Okay.
Asheville area, if you know where that is.
Yeah.
So not too far from there.
Yeah, it's great. Their family's been doing this vacation for 40 years.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal. Yeah.
Is it like 100 degrees there like it is here in Tennessee?
It's hot and humid. I think tomorrow's supposed to be like 95, but I don't mind it.
Yeah. Cool. So tell me a little bit about RAM. Like I was looking over your Instagram and some of the stuff you've been up to lately, and it seems like it was a pretty big deal. So tell us what that is and how it went.
Yeah. Well, it's the Race Across America, and I competed as part of it was supposed to be a four-man team. There's a story there. It goes from Oceanside. We started in Oceanside last Saturday at noon. I was a part of the Slow Twitch Good Life racing team with Shane Keed, myself, DJ Snyder, and then we had a rider quit in Durango. So we went from a four-man team to a three-man team. But in this particular instance, shrinkage was a good thing. So I think we lost a little bit of dead weight. The fourth rider was pretty dramatic and caused a lot of problems for the team and the crew. And so while it increased our workload pretty substantially, I think we were a better team for it. And I think everybody had a more positive experience as a result, even though once he quit, I think we were in second place overall when he quit in the four-man division. We just couldn't carry the load. So we had to shift our priorities and our goals and refocus on new goals.
Yeah, 100%. So how many hours I'm assuming it's all on bike.
Yeah.
How many hours are you taking on the bike? Like, what are your rotations like, and what was your total mileage by the time you get done in a week?
We had started, when we were a team of four, we had started shifts. We had 2 teams of 2, and our work shifts were 4 hours on, 4 hours off, 8 hours on, 8 hours off. And the thought behind that was most teams do 4 hours on, 4 hours off throughout, but with the 8 on, 8 off, it allowed both the riders and the crew the opportunity to sort of fully recover and go again. Obviously, when we lost a rider, we had to reassess, and that no longer worked. So our work shifts increased, and we were riding, I'm going to say about 20 to 22 hours a day, going 1 hour on, 2 hours off. So we would each rider would ride about an hour.
Yeah.
And then we had 4 vehicles. So the crew would cycle through rests. Like a couple of them would get in the van and drive 4 hours ahead and nap for 3 or 4 hours while we would catch up. But we had to figure out a whole new system after Durango when we were down a rider. But yeah, so starting basically 2 days in, we had to reevaluate our whole system. So yeah, we were riding about 20 hours a day. It amounted to, for me, about 7 hours of riding today. I totaled, Eric Wynn was our crew chief, and he texted me this morning and asked me what my mileage total was, and I added it up. I was actually surprised. The whole thing's only 3,000 miles, but our quitter only rode about 150 miles himself. So my mileage total was 980 miles.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a lot of riding.
Yeah. How are you feeling? Are you still recovering? Or are you pretty much well recovered?
No, I'm still recovering. Like, honestly, I had a chat with Julie Devins yesterday, as well as my nutritionist, Jared Berg, and just to sort of level set and where are we at and what do we need to do to refocus and get back to, my day job.
Yeah.
And like physically, I'm not that tired. Like my legs aren't sore. Nothing hurts. My back held up. My saddle was fine. My shoulders, my neck. Like I could go out and ride again. Like physically, I don't feel like I feel after an Ironman, and certainly not how I felt after Ultraman in that regard. But the sleep disturbance was significant in that, like I'm a sleep princess. I sleep a lot, and really regular sleep hours. Like I go to bed at 7 or 7:30, and I'm up at 5. And so that is my really regular sleep cycle. So that has been completely thrown out the window. So there's, as a result of that, there's some other physiological stuff going on. I'm really swollen for some reason. I don't know why. So, I had a good chat with Jared yesterday, and we're going to have some nutrition protocols we're going to follow to sort of cleanse and reset and get back on track. So this is primarily a recovery week. I'm going to do some super easy running because I didn't run for 8 days. I haven't swum for 8 days. Get back in the gym, restart, do some mobility activation, get everything turned back on. And then hopefully once I get back to Boulder, we can start the process of rebuilding towards my next race.
Yeah, for sure. When is your next race?
Don't know. I'm actually a blank slate right now. I had given some thought to possibly Penticton, but after Ironman Australia in May, I did some physiological testing again with Jared, and we found some stuff we really want to work on. And so rather than just sort of lather, rinse, repeat and keep training the same way, we're going to try to do some different things. So I may push my next Ironman out a bit, try a different sort of training block at this point. The stimulus has to change. I've been doing Ironman triathlon for 20 years. And so if you keep doing the same thing, you'll get the same result. And at this stage of my career, I think it's worth taking a few risks. So we're gonna maybe try some different stuff and see what comes of it.
Yeah, for sure. So how would you categorize the stage of your career right now?
We're at the tail end. I'm 53 years old. I have fewer days left ahead of me than I certainly have behind me.
Sure.
I think that's easy enough. I don't have a date in mind for when I'm going to retire. Sure. We're coming up to it, and that's just a matter of, math and science. I'm 53.
Yeah.
And I've had a better run than I could have ever. Like when I quit my job on March 15th, 2005 to start racing professionally, we thought it would be this funny story we could tell our friends in a bar, like, oh, remember that time you quit your really good job and became a pro triathlete for a year?
Yeah.
And here I am 20 years later. So it's lasted far longer and been just a mind-boggling journey. And I still love it. And so my mindset has always been, if I still love it and I can still compete, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the level of the sport is rising, and at some point my goals have evolved. I don't toe a line being like, yeah, I'm going to win this thing the way I did, 15 years ago or even 10 years ago. I have different goals now. But there's starting to be some other things that I want to explore as well. So I don't have a date in mind. I check in with my husband every so often, and we say, hey, is this still working for you? And are we still enjoying this? Is this still the right path for us? And so far it is. So
yeah,
stay tuned. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, good for you. So tell me a little bit about the progression of your mindset, because you said your goals have shifted and changed, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that that's super typical within, you know, being a professional athlete. Like most people, I would say it's like, okay, I want to be the best in the world, and you're going and you're pushing toward that,
Yeah.
and then once you kind of fall off of that, it's like, oh, I'm maybe not going to do this anymore. But you're different, so tell me why.
I never had a very big ego, right? I've always been motivated by challenging myself to do really hard things that are sort of outside the scope of what I think is possible for me, and seeing how it goes. I was a good swimmer as a kid, and chose, as opposed to going to a college that wanted me and recruited me and offered me all sorts of wonderful opportunities, I chose to walk on to the team at Stanford University. No scholarship, thought there was a very good possibility I wouldn't even get to compete with the team, that I would only get to train and swim a couple of home meets and not travel, because it was out of my league. Like it wasn't where I was, but I wanted to try. And I tried, and by the end of my freshman year, I got some money. Was on a partial scholarship, and that financial support grew throughout my collegiate career. I made my first U.S. national team at the end of my freshman year. And so I think by stepping into something that was beyond my capability, I came out of Stanford feeling like I was an average swimmer, because I swam with Olympic gold medalists and world record holders. I mean, I swam with Janet Evans and Jenny Thompson and Summer Sanders, and these are all names from the past that people probably don't know today, which is tragic. But those were that was the Katie Ledecky of our day, right? Like those were the superstars of our day. And so I was just sort of an also swam. But by doing that, I ended up a far better swimmer than I ever thought I would be. And so I've always sort of taken that mindset with me when I tackle something new. So when I was presented with the opportunity, and my coach at the time, Karen Smires, was the one that suggested I race professionally, I thought, I'll try that. Like, I'm confident in my education and my work ethic. I can always find another job and come back to corporate America when I want to. I'm going to try this. But I didn't come into professional racing as an Ironman thinking I was going to be a world champion. That wasn't my goal. My goal was, I'm a hard worker and I'm a decent athlete. Let's see how good I can be. And I've done some good things. I've won 3 Ironmans. I've won 2 70.3s. I set a world record at Ultraman. I'm an Ultraman world champion. I set the course record of the 12-hour time trial world championship. Like, I've done far more than like this, by my definition, mediocre athlete ever thought would have been possible. So I didn't come into Ironman thinking I was going to be a world champion. And I think as a result, that's made it easier for me to be a mediocre pro. Like, I just like, okay, hey, I got third. That's amazing. Like, I take opportunity as it comes and work really hard and scratch and fight and claw for every result that I can get. And I don't think anybody ever expected me to be world champion, most of all me. And so as I've evolved throughout my career, now I'm 53 and I have no business competing against the world's best, but somehow I'm out there doing it, right? Like, my consistency has fallen off. It's harder to toe a line and know which version of Dede Griesbauer is going to show up on the day. But when the good version of Dede Griesbauer shows up, I can't necessarily say I'm competing for the win, but landing on podiums. I've been a step off the podium a few times and top 5s, and I was 6th at Ironman Australia. Like, my results are still solid, and I'm still enjoying the process and trying to figure out, like, and this isn't necessarily my motivation, but I think it sends a message to other pro women that just because you turn 40, you don't have to quit. It doesn't mean you're done. There's lots of other things that you can do to not only inspire others, but to sort of impress yourself, to say, wow, I never thought that was possible. And that's sort of just been my journey. Like, who thought 20 years ago that I'd be sitting here? It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's really a lot of insight there and so many things to unpack. But one area I want to kind of aim at is, so I'm not a professional. I have probably a little bit more of an ego than you do, and I'm a very driven individual, and I have these crazy beliefs internally that I can do this or that. So specifically talking about triathlon, your mindset has been you didn't go into it wanting to be the world champion, and for those who do, I think that, like you're saying, when you hit 40 or a little, in and around that area, you're like, oh, maybe it's time to like pack up and move away. But like you said, there's so many things you can do within the sport and even outside the sport. There's so many levels of activity that you can do even in competition. How would you coach someone to adopt that kind of a mindset? Because it may not work for everybody, but I think that the majority of us, we're not going to be world champion. So how can we adopt a healthy mindset like that, you think?
I think by focusing really on the process. I talk a lot with the athletes that I coach about goal setting, and the way you're going to get the shiny object at the end, which is like the spot on the podium or the title or the slot to the world championship or whatever the tangible is. The way that you're going to get that is by setting up processes along the way that enable you to be the best version of yourself and improve yourself from where you are. So it starts with a real self-assessment, like, what are you good at and what do you suck at? And having the humility to be like, there's a lot that I suck at, right? And not a lot of people are willing to accept that because they're like, oh yeah, I'm like, they have the swagger and I can do this and I can do that and look at all these things that I am, but do you have the courage and the self-reflection to look at yourself and say, what am I not? And how do I get there? And how do I set up the new habits to get myself there? Like for me, I have the aerobic engine. I had been a world-class swimmer. I learned to swim when I was 3, started swimming competitively when I was 5, and I didn't retire until I was 24, 25. So I had this massive aerobic engine that got me off to a pretty good start in triathlon because the engine was there, but there were so many things I didn't know and so many things I could improve upon. And even to this day, I'm still working to improve upon them. Nutrition, I'm a disaster. Like I'm a basket case. I find a bowl of cereal and a glass of wine a perfectly delightful dinner. And so I really tried to focus and encourage my athletes to focus on what do you suck at and what can we make better so that that tangible thing at the end becomes more realistic because you've taken the steps along the way to ensure that this is what we all want, but how are you going to set up the processes and the steps to get there? And so that's what I try to do myself and reflect hard on what I do well and what I really need to improve upon and really put my effort into what I need to improve upon. When I was a swimmer, I was a backstroker and I was a decent freestyler and I could swim fly, but I was a dreadful breaststroker, right? And so when my high school coach, I went to boarding school in Connecticut. I went to Choate Rosemary Hall, and my swim coach was the most popular history teacher in the school, but he's one of the best coaches I've ever had. And one of the first things he did when I got to Choate was he plucked me out of the backstroke lane and put me in with the breaststrokers. And I called my parents crying. I was like, this is wrong for me. I have to get out of here. He's making me do all these things. I'm just going to get worse. I'm not a breaststroker. But what it did was by working on my weaknesses, it made my strengths stronger and it made me an incredible 400 IMer as well. So really honing in on those weaknesses. Don't turn your back on your strengths, but work on your weaknesses to get to a new and better version of yourself.
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit that nutrition right now is one of the things that you're a basket case at, but what other things are you working on in the process as Dede?
Yeah, I think a couple of things based on my age and gender. Strength is a thing that has to be a focus. Luckily for me, I've really always enjoyed working in the gym. My early days as a pro, I did some strength work, but it was somewhat haphazard. And through a friend, I was introduced to a young guy out of Boston who was just really eager and really enthusiastic, didn't know anything about endurance sports. His name's Eric Kreze. And I think he's like the strength and conditioning coach for the New York Yankees now. He's big into baseball strength and conditioning. He's got 2 facilities, one outside of Boston and one in Florida. Works with half of Major League Baseball in their off season. And I started working with him, and it lit this fire in me. I'm like, I love gym work because it's so different than what we do every day, right? Like we're like right, left. And I got into the gym, and I just love picking up heavy weight. So strength has always been a huge like joy for me. But as I've gotten older, it's had to be a real focus. I can't slack in the gym. I can't go in and just sort of check the box and be like, that's done. It's got to be a primary session. And the nature of my strength work has had to change. I don't design that myself. I now work with Kate Ligler, who is a former pro cyclist and knows our sport really, really well. She's worked with triathletes for a long time, and I have full trust in her. So we might discuss things, how are you feeling? How's your training going? And how can we script your strength sessions to improve where you're feeling weak in your training? And a lot of that is now, again, heavy lifting, explosive power, things like that. Because as we get older, we're losing muscle mass, strength declines. And so that's got to be a big focus. The nutrition is a focus. And as Julie says, as I've gotten older, I have to be perfect. When you're younger, you can sort of slack, like, oh, I don't want to do, I'm just going to get up and go out and run. Like, I can't just get up and go out and run. I've got to spend 20 minutes doing my mobility and activation and all of those things, like all of the little teeny tiny details at the tippy top of the pyramid that as busy athletes, we sometimes skirt. I have to touch every single one of those. I've got to do the cold plunging. I've got to do the Normatec boots. I've got to do the mobility. I've got to get 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night. I have to do all of the things outside of swim, bike, run to be essentially perfect in order to have a chance to compete against women who are half my age. And it's a lot of work. And I think that's why as athletes get older and you have to invest more time into nobody wants to do the little stuff. Nobody wants to do that. It's boring. It's not the fun stuff. And so as a result, a lot of people are like, I'm too tired for that. I don't want to do it anymore. And I've had to really lean into it and dive headfirst into all the teeny tiny minutia of it to keep my body healthy and able to tolerate the training and to compete.
Yeah, wow. So I love strength training, actually. I get a little bit sad when it's race season because there's obviously a little bit less and you're not focusing on just building muscle mass as much. But I'd be curious to know, what is your favorite compound movement, like exercise in the gym?
She throws so many crazy things at me. Like, we'll do like different things in different blocks. I mean, anything that I sort of love like a training block in Ironman training. It's like a journey through the block, right? And so we work in 3 or 4 week strength blocks where, I train Mondays, Thursdays, and either Saturday or Sunday. And I love the start of a new strength cycle because she'll throw all this stuff at me that some of it's dynamic and just like the coordination. I'm like, that's not possible. Like, you've just given me something that is physically not possible to do.
Yeah.
And by week 2, I'm getting a little better. By week 3, I'm nailing it. By week 4, we're at the top of the mountain. And I'm like, okay, you got to give me something else because I've mastered this one. And I just love, I love, PRs, like just the traditional stuff. Like, give me a trot bar and let me pick it up and let me pick up more weight than I ever have. Let me front squat, let me back squat, let me leg press. Not a big fan of the pull-ups, but I will say it took me like 42 years to get to do a pull-up, and I finally mastered it. So, hey, keep plugging, I say. But also, Kate makes it fun. Like, I go in there, strength training is always the last session of my day. So I'm tired when I go in there. Often it's the 3rd or sometimes even the 4th session of my day. And, but I leave feeling completely energized, and that's as it should be, right? I'm getting that great hormonal boost, and Kate's energy is so good, and I just feed off of that. And so I love it. And I think the more I can focus on that, the more I can stay relevant in the sport.
Yeah. Good deal. That's so neat. So you were talking to me about your swim career. That was a long time, from like, you said like 3 or 5 to 25. Is that right?
Yeah, 2019. When did I retire? 1992, 94. So I'm 23 years old. Yeah.
Okay, so then you took
24.
basically a 9 years, or no, 11 years, and but before you kind of found triathlon. What happened in that time period for you?
Well, I retired from swimming after not making. I was close to making the 92 Olympic team. Close enough, and still swimming best times. That despite being a college graduate, there was no post collegiate swimming. When I swam, you finish college. There were no resources for athletes, for swimmers after college. Maybe if it was an Olympic year, you'd hang around your college and swim for another year to try to make an Olympic team, but you didn't have 26, 27, 28, 30-year-olds swimming anymore because there just wasn't the structure to support them. So I was a little unusual in that regard, in that I got to my senior year and was like, well, I'm still swimming best times. Why do I have to quit? Like, I want to keep going. So I swam post-collegiately for 2 years. The assistant coach when I was at Stanford had then gone and become the men's head coach at Harvard. And so I went and trained with the Harvard men for 2 years, which was
That's awesome.
It was a lot of fun. Me and 24 guys. It was a ton of fun.
How was it fun? I want to hear stories.
It's in a sport like swimming, I can't race against a male in a 200 backstroke and win.
Sure.
But when they get good, tired, and broken down in the middle of training, I can school them up and down the pool 16 ways till next Tuesday in training. And it's just sort of fun to be a couple of lanes over and just be out touching the boys every rep and just giggle, just, loud enough so they can hear. Just yell down a couple of lanes, hey, you feeling okay today? I just noticed you're a little sluggish. But it was like, literally, it was like having 24 brothers. And it was a lot of fun. I feel like I was sensitive to the fact that it was their team. I wasn't a part of the Harvard men's swim team, but I sure felt like it. And it was a lot of fun. Yeah. I really enjoyed it. It was a great dynamic.
Yeah. So I kind of interrupted you there, but you were saying like you were doing that for a few years post college. What kind of happened and continued from then on after you totally retired?
Yeah, so I retired from swimming in 94 after not making the World Championship team, thinking that my prospects of making the 96 Olympic team were probably pretty slim. And I did feel like I was, falling behind the corporate race because all of my college friends had graduated and were on to their first and often moving to their second job by then. And I felt like I was falling behind. So I retired from swimming. I worked for a year for a consulting firm called Booz Allen and Hamilton and applied to business school. Got my MBA at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania and went to work on Wall Street. During that time, I stayed active because I had the eating habits of a swimmer. So I took up running. We had always run as, cross training for swimming because my college coach thought we were all fat. So you got put in the fat group and you have to go run after swim training, which, we were training 20 to 24 hours a week in the pool. And then you add running on top of that. But I happen to love running. I just really enjoyed it. So I kept running after I retired from swimming. I ran a couple of marathons. And then this summer, actually before I went to business school, I was dating a boy at the time, and he had just finished business school, and he said to me, I'm thinking about riding my bike across the country this summer. Do you want to come? And I thought, well, sure. And so I bought a bike, and 5 days later, we flew to Seattle and rode back to New Jersey. Just the two of us, self-supported. Unfortunately, we broke up in Montana. He was a bit
my goodness.
He was a bit of a boob, as it turns out. And I just was like, but we did finish the trip. And so I stayed active. So when I got to Wharton, I had finished the bike trip, started my studies at Wharton, and some friends of mine were training for the New York City Marathon. They were going out, like we had just gotten to school, it was like August. And so then we're going out to run 10 miles. And I was like, I wonder if I could run 10 miles. I'd never run more than like 6 or 7 miles. So I was like, I wonder if I could run 10 miles. So I was like, can I go with you guys? And they're like, sure. And so I went out and ran 10 miles with them, and it was really fun. And the next week I ran 12, and I was like, I'm going to go with you. And so I basically did all of their training for the New York City Marathon. And we got to a week before the marathon. They're like, Dede, you really ought to find a marathon and go run it, because you've basically done all the training. And so at the time, the Philly Marathon was like 2 weeks after New York. And I literally watched it the day before and signed up for it and ran the Philadelphia Marathon. So I stayed active. And then when I was in business school, I was burnt out from studying and just turned on the TV and happened to see the Ironman on, and was just, I had no idea what I was watching, but it was the year that Karen Smires chased down Paula Newby-Fraser, and was very, very dramatic. And my jaw hit the floor, and I was like, sign me up. Like, I have to do this. And so the summer after business school, I signed up for my first Ironman. I didn't have any money because I just paid for business school. My job didn't start until August, and so I had 3 months. And I didn't have a travel bug after doing the bike trip. I just was like, I don't want to travel. All my friends were going to Europe and traveling. I was like, no traveling for me. I've done that. So I spent 3 months and I trained for my first Ironman, and I did one, and I was a one and done kind of person. I did Vineman. And then I started my career on Wall Street, and I kept running, when I moved to Manhattan, and I swam with the New York Athletic Club, but never really had any thoughts of triathlon again until a few years later. I had met my husband in New York. We had moved up to Boston, gotten married, and I thought, just kind of want to try an Ironman again. I want to train a little smarter and, see if I can go a little faster. And I signed up for Ironman Florida in 2002 and didn't train any smarter or harder, but went to Ironman Florida. And this was now a proper Ironman race because the first one had been Vineman. And I won the amateur race. Again, I had a good engine. I had no idea what I was doing and how that even happened, but I was finished top amateur and qualified for Kona. And I thought, well, we have to go to Hawaii, don't we? And then through a Wall Street, through a Wall Street contact, I was introduced to Karen Smires, who I had seen on TV, was my inspiration for signing up for my very first Ironman. And I was living in Boston at the time. She lives outside of Boston, and I got connected with her, and she offered to coach me, and the rest, they say, is history. I blame Karen for all of this, actually.
Yeah, wow. So talk me through, first I'm curious, for the Ironman Florida amateur overall win, what was your time?
I was like, I want to say like 10 hours, 20 minutes or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was, I don't remember, 10 hours something, just over 10 hours.
Second question.
I don't know. I probably didn't even have a watch on, to be honest.
Yeah. Just getting to finish it. That's really impressive. And your nutrition-wise, like, did you, just kind of fumble your way through that?
I'm 100% convinced that I would have done that race on, like, for breakfast. I can tell you, because I remember distinctly, my breakfast at the time was a Power Bar, like the old original Power Bar.
Nasty.
And a Diet Coke. Yeah.
I love it.
On the bike, I probably had some Gatorade because they offered that on the course, and I'm sure I did the entire run on water alone. 100%.
And no sodium, no salt intake whatsoever, I'm sure. Electrolytes, what's that?
Who needs it?
Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah.
Do you remember how much Ironman Florida was to sign up and how much Kona was back then?
I really don't. I do remember. I had no idea I knew what Kona was.
Yeah.
But it hadn't been in my thought process that I would ever qualify for it. So I was more stressed. Like, if Ironman Florida was on a Sunday, I think I had booked like a Monday morning flight, like early morning, out of Panama City Beach to fly back to Boston. And I thought, I need to be back on the training desk by noon. Like, I didn't want to take any more vacation time. So I had booked like a 6 a.m. flight that morning to fly back to Boston. And so I finished the race, and I remember at the time my hotel room was right next to Ben and Dara Furtick. So Ben at the time was running timing for Ironman, right? He was running all the timing mats and the technology for Ironman. And I just sort of befriended Dara. I think they had 2 of their 3 girls. And she was so apologetic because one of the younger ones was kind of fussy. She's like, oh, I hope she's not keeping you up at night. And So we just were chatting as I would come and go and from the hotel room. And after I finished, she's like, well, how did you do? And I was like, oh, I won the race. Like I was top amateur. And she's like, oh my God, that's amazing. So you're going to Kona. I was like, I'm what? Like I didn't know what that meant. She's like, well, you have to collect your slot tomorrow to go to Kona. And so I looked at my husband. I was like, we have to go upstairs and change our flight. Now, keep in mind, changing your flight back then meant going up to your hotel room, using your dial phone to call the airline and be like, I need to change my flight. So we changed our flight. Roll down was at like 9 a.m. So we changed our flight to like an afternoon flight out of, I don't even remember where. Maybe we got an afternoon flight out of Panama City Beach. So we did all that. We go back down to the finish line, and we're hanging out of the finish line with our new friends Ben and Dara Furtick, and Ben's like, oh, that's great, you got a Kona slot. He's like, so we'll see you at awards tomorrow night. And I was like, awards?
Change your flight again.
Back we go up to our hotel room. We had to change our flight again to Tuesday morning. This time we had to fly out of Atlanta at like 6 a.m. on Tuesday. And so we went to awards at Monday night at like 7, got in the car at like 11 and drove from Panama City Beach to somewhere outside the Atlanta airport and literally got a hotel room. I was actually telling the guys during RAM about this because we stayed in some pretty seedy, well, we stayed in the RV, but the crew stayed in some pretty seedy hotels across the country. And so I was telling them the story of how we had driven from Panama City Beach to the Atlanta airport and like literally got a hotel room for like 2 hours at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm sure they looked at us and were like, do you rent room by the hours?
Yeah.
We were married for 2 years and they're like, you want an hourly rate for this totally seedy hotel outside of Atlanta somewhere? We were so tired, but yeah. So I had no concept. I had absolutely no concept, but yeah, that's how it all began.
Wow. So an Ironman, the Florida one, you qualified for your elite license at that point, right?
I did not take it. I didn't.
You did not take it.
I don't even know what the process was back then, to be honest, but it wasn't on my mind. Like the fact that I qualified for Kona was exciting in and of itself. And I loved my job. I didn't have any plans to quit my job. So I was perfectly happy to go try to compete at the Ironman World Championship as an age grouper. I didn't have thoughts of becoming a pro triathlete. I was an equity trader on Wall Street. That's what I did. And I just did triathlon for fun.
Yeah. Well, let's pause for a second because I'm curious about the equity trading because, I mean, I guess type A, very driven personality, that totally makes sense, but was your career path at that point kind of chosen for you? But because you went to Wharton Business School, did you want to get on Wall Street? Was that your aim?
Honestly, back since I was in college, I always wanted to be in some sort of sports management, sports marketing. I remember when I had graduated from college, one of my teammates' dads was a lawyer and he was friends with, he was friends with a guy who was on the legal team for the San Jose Sharks, the hockey team. And I remember they set up like an informational interview for me with the San Jose Sharks because I wanted to work. Sports had been such a big part of my life, like as a swimmer, that I just loved how no matter what's going on in your life, you can turn on the TV and find your favorite sports team and it sort of lifts you up, right? Like it's an outlet. It's something that adds to people's lives, in the idealistically, right? Like there's a dark side to sport, but we'll keep it light.
Sure.
And so I'd always wanted to kind of do that. And then I got to Wharton and they had a sports management program, but it was so small and everybody at Wharton was in finance. And I had grown up in a community where everyone worked on Wall Street. Everyone's dad worked on Wall Street. And so I became a lemming. I got kind of roped in. I loved trading and I was definitely in the right spot for me in terms of, I didn't want investment banking. I didn't want 100-hour work weeks. I had thought I wanted to do equity research, but I spent half an internship in equity research and was like falling asleep at my desk. And the guy who ran the associate program was like, I know you think you want to do equity research. He's like, but I think I know where you're going to fit better. And he put me on a trading desk and I was like, all over it. I was like, this is where I belong. And so I really did enjoy my job. But I think in my heart, if I retire from professional triathlon, I would probably go back and pursue something in the sporting world, either as an athletic director at a school or even working for Ironman, something to, I don't know, impact people's lives in a positive way. I think sport is such a great asset to people's lives in terms of lifestyle and outlet for real world stuff that we all have to deal with in life. And sport is a great outlet for that. And it's been such an impactful part of my life in changing my life in such a positive way and being such a positive impact for me that I think giving that opportunity to people and being a part of, creating that opportunity for other people in some capacity is probably where my heart lies.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for sharing that piece of your story. So going back, Kona, you're going to Kona for the first time. You get there, you compete. I guess I want to hear a little bit how that race went. And then when did you start to decide or think, oh, maybe I'll give this pro triathlon thing a real go?
Yeah, again, I was coached by Karen Smires. And so I felt like what Karen did, I did. I became a little kind of training partner for her. In that she was coming to the end of her career, and then all of a sudden in comes this firecracker where, she says, well, we're going to do this. And I was like, well, let's go longer. Let's go farther. Let's go faster. I was so enthusiastic and so excited to have the opportunity to be an athlete again. It just lit me up inside. And so I really just emulated everything I could and learned everything I could from Karen. She was such a positive role model, because as incredible and successful an athlete as she is the most human being I think I've ever met in my life. Talk about no ego, right? She has no airs about her whatsoever. For the degree of success that she had as an athlete, she is as normal as they come and could not have been a better role model in terms of providing, perspective. And when I'm living and dying by race results, she's like, yeah, but Dede, is that really what matters? She just had this way about her that was just so impactful for me, that I just feel really, really lucky to have had that guidance. So even going to Kona my first time, I shipped my bike out to Kona by FedEx, right? I had a bike box, but I didn't know how to take my bike apart, and I didn't know how to put it together either. So I literally took it to the bike shop. They packed it for me. And then I lived only 6 or 7 blocks from my office in Boston. So I literally dragged the bike box into work one day, got a case of beer, brought it down to the mailroom, and asked the guys in the mailroom to ship it to a bike shop in Hawaii. And they did it.
For the price of a six-pack of beer?
Yeah, case of beer.
No way. Wow,
Yeah,
that sounds like a
100%.
better deal than most people today. So
yeah, 100%.
Maybe we should try that.
So they sent it to Bikeworks, which was in the little strip mall where the club is now. It used to be up the hill there. And I shipped it out. I FedExed it, so it arrived in 2 days. And I was set to fly out the next day, and my phone rings, and it's the guys from Bikeworks, and they're like, was this quarter-size puncture hole in your down tube when you sent the bicycle to us? Well, wait for it, because I had to say to them, what's a down tube?
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, what does that mean? And so it was they're like, you can't ride this bike in Kona. You can't. It's not safe. And talk about the differences. But I mean, if that were to happen now, it would be a massive bummer. But you stand on Elite Drive during race week and put your hand up and you're like, my helmet's broken. I forgot my bike shoes. I need a bicycle. My aero bar broke. And literally 50 people will swarm you and be like, what do you need? Here you go. The resources were that the expo at the time was literally the Gatorade booth and the head sweats guy. There wasn't a lot. It wasn't a big deal. And everybody in Kona who had a bike had to use it. So there weren't any extra bikes lying around. So I spent 4 or 5 days at the bike shop, sitting outside, sobbing. Does anybody have a bike? Finally, the day before the race, this little girl who worked at the bike shop, she's like, well, I have a bike you can use. She's like, it might fit you. She's like, it's a little bit big for me. She was 5'4". I'm 5'9". I was like, your bike it's not going to fit me. But she went home and got it and brought it in. And it was this beautiful Kestrel. I called it the Purple Princess because it was this sort of periwinkle, bluish, purplish color And so literally they like measured it up and adjusted the seat and did what they could. And I got on it and I rode it down the hill and I checked it in for the race the next day. Like that was how my first Kona went. But I ended up being like, I forget now, top 5 in my age group and had a really great experience with it. Minus the stress. But at the time I had no concept that, like, I didn't even have the thought then that I'd race professionally. It was the next year I went back as an age grouper and kind of thought, maybe I would like to do that. Like I was a competitive age grouper. I would often win my age group. I had no problem qualifying for Kona. And then it wasn't until after my second Kona that I remember so distinctly. I went out to Karen's house. We were doing a CompuTrainer workout in her little training studio. And she looked over at me in the middle of these god awful intervals. And she's like, would you ever consider quitting your job and racing professionally? And I was like, yes, I would. She's like, okay, we're going to finish this workout then. And I was like, okay. But she's the one that really first planted the seed. It hadn't ever, it wasn't on my agenda. It hadn't occurred to me that I was even good enough to try. And see, she suggested it and I went home and I was having dinner with my husband. I set him a little extra wine. And at the end of dinner, I just looked at him and I was like, so Karen said the craziest thing to me tonight. He's like, what's that? I was like, she suggested I quit my job and race professionally as a triathlete. And he looked at me stone cold, sober, dead in the eye. And he's like, if you don't go in and quit your job tomorrow, I'll quit it for you.
Wow.
Like didn't skip a beat. Now,
what a husband.
If I was to pull him up here right now, he would say, like, I didn't expect you to do it for 20 years.
Yeah.
But he didn't skip a beat. He was like, you need to do this. Like, this is amazing. You need to do it. And again, as I said, we thought it'd be this crazy thing we did one time. We didn't think it would become what it has. But yeah, his confidence in me gave me the confidence to do it. And I'll be darned if I didn't walk into the office the next day and sit down and say, 2 weeks notice, I'm out of here. March 15th, 2005, my last day of work.
Wow. Well, at least you got out before the financial crisis, I guess.
That was rough.
Yeah, good
Well,
grief.
it was rough because my first job on Wall Street was at Lehman Brothers, right? So
my goodness,
I had Lehman stock, and my husband works in financial services, and their analyst hadn't even downgraded the stock, but their analyst had made a comment on the Lehman situation, and as a result, you get restricted. And so we sat and watched as the whole thing unfolded, and stocks really do go to zero. They go all the way to zero. They don't bounce off of zero. They just go to zero and they die. And that's what happened. I mean, for me, it wasn't dramatic. I worked at Lehman for 2 years. I mean, I think about people that I worked with at Lehman who had retired and had to go back to work because they lost everything. So, yeah. Bummer.
Yeah. Wow. Crazy time. So, well, I was going to ask you, I guess, the question when you quit your job, like, today it's really hard to make it as a professional financially, but you had your husband, I guess. Was he the breadwinner for a little while to kind of help propel that career move?
A little bit. I mean,
you still had some money.
I don't want to judge other people's financial situations, but I was raised in a way that we lived below our means. And so we had a good cushion and he had a good job. So things like insurance, I didn't have to worry about health insurance.
Yeah.
And then almost from the beginning, I had side hustles. With Karen, I coached CompuTrainer classes out of Fast Splits, a bike shop in Boston. And I didn't start coaching until 2006. So, the first year, I didn't have a lot of resources. And then the second year, I started doing some coaching and had money coming in. And I won my first Ironman my second year and started getting contracts. And so I had starting in 2007, I had ridden Karen's coattails into Saucony and had a pretty good contract from them and was with Saucony for about 10 years. And then after I won my first Ironman, I got, a nutrition sponsor, I had a wetsuit sponsor, I got a bike contract. And so I wasn't making what I was making on Wall Street, obviously. Sure. But almost like my second year in the sport, I had good contracts right away, better contracts than I have now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked a bit about how you find fulfillment in the process, and that's carried you through your career and all the different, I guess, stages that it's gone through. Has that ever become, or was that ever, was there ever a point when you were tempted to kind of draw your identity and fulfillment more from the results and, the just being at the top rather than the process?
I'm not good enough to do that. Like, I'm not good enough. And most people aren't. Like, I'm amazed by people who define themselves by their results. When their results, I'm like, okay, like that's how you want to, okay, like that, and that's good for them. Like it's amazing. It's never been me. It's always been about the journey and the opportunity that I've been presented and how much I want to make out of it. The results are great. Don't get me wrong. And I have no interest, talk about the Ironman Pro Series, right? Phenomenal. The resources that are available to pro triathletes now and the opportunities financially for pro triathletes if they race well. It wasn't on my radar to go compete in the Pro Series because I don't thrive in competing for 25th place. Like it doesn't really excite me. I'd rather go to some smaller races and feel like I'm a part of the race than Griesbauer fighting for 26th place. Like that to me, it kind of runs counter to it's all the journey, not necessarily the results. But I've never thought I was good enough to define myself by my results. It's the experiences. And that's why this whole RAM thing this last week was so, and I'm still sort of digesting that and unpacking it myself, sort of both physically and emotionally, in that we had a good team. And I don't know if we would have won the 4-man race. We would have been competitive, I think. And then having to abandon that so abruptly because of the behavior of one individual was hard. But I think the thing that I'm going to take away, and I think the perspective that I have as an athlete that I gained as a swimmer, I remember, I remember a couple of best times, but I don't really remember best times. I don't remember, we would go to meets and I'd be tired and I'd turn in a crappy 200 backstroke and I'd wear it like a hair shirt and be miserable and unhappy. But now, 35 years later, I don't remember any of that. I remember my friends and I remember the experiences that I have. I got to go to Cuba and I met Fidel Castro and I have these friendships with these teammates that are lifelong bonds that are absolutely unshakable. And so even like with RAM, like we didn't get to compete the way we wanted to compete, but the people that I met through that experience, I knew two people. I knew Shane Peed, who was our team captain, and I knew Eric Wynn, who was our crew chief. I didn't know anybody else, and I have literally 12 new best friends that I'm going to be bonded to for life in a really meaningful way, that if they picked up the phone and they're like, Dede, I'm going to be like, I'll be right there. And to me, that's what it's all about. Like, who's going to come to the end of their life and count their gold medals and world records, and that doesn't make you a good human. And I would rather be a good human and a positive role model and a resource to my friends and a resource to my athletes and to my family, and the rest of it is just stuff.
Yeah. Good answers. I think a lot of lessons there to be learned. I'm kind of soaking all this in because I'm 31 and I'm like, I keep hearing some of these reflections from, I interviewed Simon Wetfield not too long ago and a few other of the, I would just say like more senior in terms of like experience, people who've been in these sports, and I'm like trying to really take it in, learn from the experiences of those before me rather than having to fall off the tree and learn it myself. So I really appreciate you giving such thought and eloquence to the delivery of those philosophies that I am still trying to adopt. So I appreciate that.
Don't get me wrong, this stuff is great. Like, I mean, who doesn't want a gold medal and who doesn't want to, like, to this day, I'm envious, like watching all the Olympic trials now. To me, like, I'm almost glad I haven't watched the swimming trials because it's the hardest meet, right? Like, it's harder than the Olympic Games, right? Because some superstar who's supposed to make the team is just going to have an off day and miss. And then some 16-year-old you've never heard of is going to swim out of their minds and make their first Olympic team, and their life is going to be changed forever. And I still, if I have one regret, I really would have liked to have been an Olympian. I think that would have been really, really special. But it's funny because I talk to Olympians now. I talk to Julie. She's been to the Olympic Games in triathlon. She's like, it's just so stressful. She's like, like at the end of the day, it should have been this great experience, and it's just so stressful. But for me, the opportunity to be an Olympian, it's universal. You walk into a room anywhere in the world and you say you have those Olympic rings tattooed, or you say I'm an Olympian, and automatically it means something. But the rest of this stuff, I walk in and I'm like, I'm an Ironman champion. People are like, what's Ironman? Right? Like, this stuff is great, but I think what I have learned is that it's the experiences along the way that are the things that you're going to cling to more than the medals and the times and the results and the all world athlete status and the other stuff. I get that that's important. And I will never tell someone that those goals and priorities are not good goals, because that's the athlete's goal, and I will embrace that as my own as well as a coach, but it's just never been my goal.
Yeah. So speaking of experiences, we talked a little bit about you being the voice of Ironman commentating for
Mike Riley
races.
Is the voice. I could never say that.
Yeah. I had to walk it back
respect for Mike Riley.
Yeah. So, you've obviously done that. I think that's an experience that I would love to have one day. It just sounds like a ton of fun. But tell me about that as an experience. Like, how did you get involved with that? I guess I just reached out to you, but how has that been?
Yeah, I love it. I really love it. It's been a great opportunity, and it's been an unusual opportunity because at my core, and people don't believe me when I say this, but at my core, I'm an introvert. I do not thrive as like in the spotlight necessarily. I don't do well at parties. I'm a bit of a loner. I'm pretty quiet. And so Ironman had reached out to me right when they were signing the contract with Facebook to start putting the races on Facebook, and they asked if I would be interested in doing commentary. And I was like, me? And I was terrified. I was terrified, but I had the great fortune of getting to work alongside Michael Lovato and Greg Welch, who had the confidence and the personalities to really carry the show. Like, my first couple of shows, I remember 70.3 Worlds was one of my first shows with them.
Wow. That's a big
and
one.
I sat in the booth with Michael, and I think it was actually Matt Lieto. And we're watching the feed, and the boys are running the show. And every once in a while, I would have like a thought would pop into my head, and I literally would sit in the booth and raise my hands. And they would throw at me. They were like, "Okay, Dede has something to say." And it took me a really long time, and I'm so grateful to the team for giving me the opportunity in the first place. But then so grateful to my co-commentators, who really made me feel at ease and helped me sort of crawl and then walk. And I'm still only jogging with it. And that's the thing I was explaining to my family here. I love doing the commentary. I'm not a professional commentator. I have no background in sports journalism or anything like that. And so when people get nasty on the comments and make snide comments, I'm like, yeah, I'm a Wharton MBA. Like, I do financial ratios. Like, it's not what I'm trained to do, but I have such a passion for the sport and such a love of this ridiculous sport that I want to share that. And the fact that I have the opportunity to do that with a microphone and tell the stories of some of these really inspiring athletes and call some of these incredible races where they are doing unbelievable things, it's a source of inspiration for me. And if I can be a microphone to carry that enthusiasm and experience and inspire somebody else who is on the internet and clicks on a button by mistake, much the way I turned on NBC and saw Ironman on TV for the first time, and I can get someone to say, I think I want to sign up for one of those. This seems really, really cool. Then I'm happy. I've done my job, and that's all I want, is to introduce people to this sport and have them be as enthusiastic about it as I am.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great honor. One of the coolest things about doing this podcast is obviously get to talk to a lot of these really inspiring people, such as yourself, but then having people send me comments and emails or texts of, even sometimes it's the guests themselves, like, hey, people listen to my story and like this really helped me to be able to explain further this, or hey, this really inspired someone I know, or someone says, hey, this really inspired me because I was able to relate to this specific person. So I think at the end of the day, like you're saying, being able to share and communicate those inspirations to people to where they find a deeper meaning in life for themselves that they can pass on to someone else is like one of the greatest gifts. It's better than a gold medal, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, life is hard and life is a drag for 99% of it. And if we can be a little ray of sunshine somewhere in someone's life, then bring it. I'm all about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, in kind of the final question, to give a piece of advice based on your experience for a lot of the younger people out there who haven't figured out their lives yet and they're looking for a sense of purpose in their lives. What advice would you give them to be able to find that sense of purpose or fulfillment?
Follow your passion. I think life is way too short to be unhappy. And if you're doing something in your life that's making you unhappy, if you're unhappy with your physical fitness, if you're unhappy with your job, if you're unhappy with your relationships, do your best to make the best of the situation that you're in. And if you can't make it better, change. Again, I loved my job on Wall Street and I had a great opportunity. I find this one to be better and I choose it every single day. And I think you don't have to settle. You can seek out your passion, and dive in with your whole heart and soul because it's worth it. You take risks, and I don't necessarily take risks lightly. Calculated risks, I call them, but life's too short to be unhappy. So follow your passion and I've been able to turn my passion into an entire career and I'm just so grateful. And so figure out a way. And if you can't figure it out yourself, ask for help and just do it. It's so worth it.
Yeah, I love it. Seek out your passion, dive in with your heart and soul. That's a good quote for the end. But Dede, thank you so much for coming on, for letting me ask some questions. I feel like we only touched on really a part of your life. A lot of other areas I would still like to ask questions in, so maybe have to have you on again in the future. But thank you so much for coming on and letting me.
I've been around a long time. I've got a lot of stories to tell.
I love how you wear it on your sleeve too, and it's like you talk about it. That's good.
I've been around longer than the furniture, so I got tales to tell. But thank you, Seth. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much to Dede Griesbauer for coming on and sharing a bit about her life. She's obviously seen a lot of different things, a lot of transformation in the sport, a lot of growth, and has been a part of that growth, and obviously has impacted a lot of people. So thank you, Dede, for coming on the episode. Wanted to leave you with the last few words from her when I asked her, basically, for those looking to find purpose in their lives, what advice would you give them? She said, seek out your passion and dive in with your heart and soul. So whatever it is that you're passionate about, seek and find that. If you made it to this far in the episode, just want to say thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here and listening. If you are able to, it would be awesome if you could like, comment, subscribe, share, comment, do anything and everything you can to share this on all of the platforms. It really does continue to help me grow as an interviewer and help to grow the show. So hopefully I can do this full time one day and continue to just bring on amazing people. So thank you guys so much for making this dream of mine a reality. Really appreciate it, and we'll catch you in the next one.